Hey guys, what's up? It's me again. So I was initially planning on making a different type of Danganronpa video discussing a certain character in depth, but I got writer's block, and instead of making you guys wait as I procrastinated on finishing my mangled script, I decided to work on a much easier type of video that will benefit both me and my audience. Little did I know that said video would be over an hour long. It benefits me since a list like this is based solely on my personal opinions and preferences, so unlike my murder motive list, I don't have to worry about getting my facts wrong, since there are no facts. It also benefits you guys, since my two most popular videos are Danganronpa related, and you probably want to see me talk more about the franchise. Before we start, I feel like it's necessary for me to go over how I'll do something like this. This video will contain every character from the main series games, Ultra Despair Girls, and the D3 anime. It will not, however, include any characters from the novels or manga, as I have not read any of them, which will affect how I rank certain characters. Unlike my motive video, I will not rank these characters in order from worst to best. Instead, the order will be based on the games they come from and the order they are listed in the Danganronpa wiki, with some exceptions. In terms of score, I will be ranking them on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the absolute lowest of the low, and 10 being so wonderful that I have nothing bad to say whatsoever. These rankings will be based on a mix of how well I think a character is written and how much I personally like them. No goofy joke ratings like 100 out of 10 or -0 out of 10. I'm also supposed to use 1s and 10s sparingly to make sure they have value. Also, take the ratings themselves with a grain of salt. I really struggle to give some of these characters a number as there are so many variables to consider. I'll try to be fair and honest with my rankings, but it is best to look at my commentary of the character over the actual numbers. Without further ado, let's begin. Trigger Happy Havoc, the game that started it all. When it comes to characters, I'd say this game has the weakest. This is not to say the characters are bad. Every Danganronpa game has great characters, at least in the mainline games, that is. It's just that these characters are a little more generic in comparison, and if a character like one in Trigger Happy Havoc were to appear in a newer game, they would be received as one of the weaker characters. That being said, I still like a lot of the characters, and certainly have my favorites and least favorites.
Before we go any farther, I guess I should introduce myself. My name's Makoto Naegi.
Honestly, ranking Makoto is like ranking Deku, Ash, Goku, or literally any other shonen protagonist because that's all he is. To be fair, he does serve his job well as a shonen protagonist. He was just relatable enough to feel like a playable character, and there was never a time where I ever disliked or hated Makoto. But even then, there is nothing that distinguishes himself from other shonen protagonists or subverts him from the archetype that he is based on. Every other Danganronpa protagonist has something that makes them a unique character, but for Makoto, he really is just generic shonen protagonist. Makoto isn't a character, he's an archetype. That being said, he's a well-executed archetype, and I like him fairly enough. 5.5 out of 10. I was contemplating even putting Monokuma on this video, but considering that I put Monomi, the Kuma twins, and the Monokubs all in this video, it only made sense for me to add the OG bear as well. Despite being the antagonist of the entire franchise, I actually don't have much to say about this character, but what I do have to say is that he fits his role perfectly. His humorous, sadistic personality, combined with the more threatening side to him, perfectly encapsulates the cruel but ironic nature of the killing game. Personally, I like him enough. There were some parts where I laughed at his jokes, and I never really found him annoying. That being said, I never really thought to myself, wow, I love Monokuma! He was just kinda there, but I'd be lying if I said he didn't make a major contribution to Danganronpa as a whole. 6.5 out of 10.
Heya! I'm Asahina, but my friends just call me Hina. Sup?
Like Monokuma, I don't feel like I have much to say with Aoi, but I do think she's pretty likable as a character. I liked how they gave her more depth outside of being the generic nice character, and I really liked her relationship with Sakura. In fact, I think she might actually be one of the more fleshed out characters in the game, which kinda surprised me at first because when I think of Aoi, I kind of assumed she was one of the more forgettable survivors, when in reality, the opposite is true. She's not one of my favorites, but I still like her, and I think she does deserve to survive the killing game. 6.5 out of 10.
Name's Byakuya Togami.
Byakuya is the first of our three rivals, and out of the three, I'd say he's the most cliché. Not my least favorite, just the most cliché. He's almost Makoto levels of by the books when it comes to him and his rival character archetype. There's not really a reason why he wants to win the killing game, just that he has to because someone has to make things harder for everyone else. In his free time event, I think the writers were trying to make him a little more sympathetic by giving him a backstory where he has to earn his wealth by fighting all 14 of his siblings, but I don't think it worked in my opinion. Another thing I don't really like about Byakuya is his legend redemption. As typical of the token rival, I expected for Byakuya to get a redemption arc and change for the better, but the way they did it was weird. At first, I thought he didn't get a redemption arc at all with the fact that his behavior didn't change whatsoever. When I was under this impression, I was kind of happy about it, since it was a subversion to the cliché that Byakuya was so connected to, as well as a harsh reminder that not everyone wants to get better. However, it turns out that a redemption arc was supposed to happen, and since that was the writer's true intent, I feel like it was done poorly. It feels more like Byakuya just got his way this time rather than looking into himself and becoming a better person. However, I do feel like this pseudo-redemption gives way to something really clever in the sequel, which I will talk about later. Does this mean there isn't anything good about this character? Of course not! There are some things I actually like about Byakuya. For one, he has some of the funniest lines in the game, which is only amplified by his incredible voice actor. With all the other comic relief characters out there, we really needed a character that used dry and sarcastic humor. I also really like his funny dynamic with Togo. Even so, he's a rather weak character. 4 out of 10.
I do not think we have been introduced. I am Celestia Ludenberg.
Celeste is kind of a weird one to talk about. Since her killer reveal and execution had the strongest impression on me, I often forget what she was like before Case 3, and to be honest, she was actually quite interesting. She was one of the only students that suggested that we ignore the killing game and try to enjoy our new lives in the school, which, looking back on it, was what was supposed to happen this whole time. Even if you didn't take spoilers into account, it was probably the most rational course of action, as it is the only one that guarantees that no one will be killed. I also really liked her level-headed but sarcastic personality, and found it rather unique and interesting. Also, despite saying that she has the most unjustified motive in my motive video, I was actually quite happy that she's a killer and has such a crummy motive. When first playing this game, I thought Celeste would play a very important role to the story, seeing how much she stands out in both personality and opinion, so to see that she would be punished as a killer was not only a serious sacrifice, but it also shows that no one is invincible in the killing game, no matter how important they seem. I also like how awful her motivation is because it shows that not everyone who kills in the killing game is perfectly justified in doing so, and that is something this game needed in order to keep its grey morality. The only thing I kinda dislike about Celeste is that the seemingly calm person turns out to be angry is a trope that I am not fond of. There are also other tropes about Celeste that I am not fond of either, but that's minimal compared to all the things Celeste does right. While I did really like Celeste playing Trigger Happy Havoc, she wasn't one of my all-time favorites, but actually taking time to think about her as a character, she should be. I was surprised to find out how great of a character she is and how much I actually liked her. One of the more prominent problems when it comes to Danganronpa characters is that they are divided into a binary of important characters and non-important characters. Celeste is one of those few that shatters this dichotomy and has a character that is in between those two archetypes. Although I have plenty of characters in this game that I personally prefer over Celeste, speaking from a more analytical and objective point of view, I'd say that Celeste is the best character in Trigger Happy Havoc. 9 out of 10.
Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Chihiro Fujisaki.
Okay, this little guy is one of my favorites for Trigger Happy Havoc. He's just so cute, I love him! Initially when I guessed that they were going for the Chihiro is actually a guy twist, I hated the idea, but now I don't mind it. His motive for doing so makes sense, and his relationship with Mondo is both sad and sweet. I also really like how, even after he dies, he plays a prominent role in both Trigger Happy Havoc and Goodbye Despair with Alter Ego. The only other characters that affect the others even after their death are Nagito, Chiaki, and Kaede, so the fact that Chihiro not only performed an act associated with the only most important characters out there, but also did it before them really shows how significant Chihiro really is to Danganronpa. I guess the only flaw that Chihiro has is that it's pretty obvious that he's the victim in his respective case, but that's the case with all Danganronpa victims, so it's not really his fault. 8 out of 10.
I am Hifumi Yamada, but if you want to call me by my nickname,
the Alpha and the Omega!
I don't mind.
I'm pretty sure it's not controversial to say that this guy is the worst Trigger Happy Havoc character by far. I mean, it's as if the writer specifically written Hifumi to be unlikable and nothing else. There are more hateable characters out there, but all of them at least have something that could be seen as likable. But for Hifumi, there's nothing. He's written solely to be hated by the audience, and not in a good way either. Even in the free time events, instead of giving him an ounce of humanity, Hifumi's still the creep we see throughout the game. It's sad, really. So, are there any good aspects to this guy? Well, in terms of being unlikable, most characters are very in-your-face about it, but with Hifumi, you can usually just avoid or ignore him for the most part. Also, I really like his relationship with Alter Ego. Usually it's played out for comic relief, but there are a couple scenes where it shows that Hifumi genuinely cared for him, even if it's in his own Hifumi way. I think this is the only time where the writers treated Hifumi as more than just the butt of the joke. Despite being the worst Trigger Happy Havoc character, he's far from the worst character in general, and it actually has some potential. He still is the worst Trigger Happy Havoc character though. 3 out of 10.
Hi! I'm Junko Enoshima. Charmed, I'm sure.
This is going to be a rather difficult character to rank, seeing as Mukuro dies early on in the game and not much is known about her aside from her novels, which I haven't read. There's also her appearance in the D3 anime, but the D3 anime does a lot of things poorly, and according to people who have read her novels, she is greatly flanderized there. I'll just be going over her free time events and my experiences playing Trigger Happy Havoc if that's okay with you. I might do an addendum in this video or later once I get to experience those pieces of media. I actually really love Mukuro, or at least what she's like in her Junko facade. Her sarcastic, no-nonsense attitude easily made her one of my favorites. I also like that in her free time and school mode events, there are certain things that she says that have double meanings of her being an ultimate despair. Unfortunately, in the ultimate talent development plan, her charming personality disappears. I don't know if it has to do with her being more like herself in the novels or what, but it's something I noticed. Even so, Junkoro is a very fun character whose charm might even rival her sister's. 7 out of 10. Also, I really prefer Junkoro's design over the actual Junko. She just feels a lot more lively and has a lot more character, which I think was intentional to show how emotionless true Junko actually is. Now that we talked about Junkoro, let's talk about the real deal, shall we? I've discussed in my twist villain video why she's a really effective twist villain before, and I really like her gimmick after the twist. Of course a person completely consumed by despair would try anything to make herself feel something, so having her switch personalities on the dime simply because she's that bored is genius. I also like how, even though having a secret twin in disguise sounds outlandish, it is personally reasonable and possible, so the audience can be surprised by such a crazy twist without their suspension of disbelief being broken with the idea of a character allegedly coming back to life. One thing I really like about Junko is that, occasionally, you get to see a glimpse of her true self, an unfeeling being who must be in a constant state of despair in order to feel truly satisfied with her life. It's pretty spooky, isn't it? 8 out of 10.
I'm Kiyotaka Ishimaru. I believe in bold simplicity. Let's work together on our educational crusade.
Here's another one of my favorites. Although he's not as deep as the others I've discussed here, I really love his character. Over-the-top characters like him are really funny to me if done right, and whenever Taka shows up, I either laugh at his antics or simply smile because I like him so much. I thought his relationship with Mondo was really cute, and I forgot to mention this in Hifumi's slot, but the whole alter ego love triangle thing was hilarious to me. One thing I find interesting about Taka that isn't talked about enough is his philosophy with talent versus effort in his free time events. In it, he actually dislikes his abilities being labeled as a talent, stating that his hard work and effort is what got him to Hope's Peak. I find it interesting when characters go in depth into their talents, and I always wondered what would happen if Taka met Nagito, someone who believes that effort is non-existent and everyone is either born skilled or unskilled. We could have a really insightful discussion with what is or isn't talent, or if talent's even a thing at all. Well, turns out in the Ultimate Talent Development Plan, they did happen to meet, and...
Oh, good morning, Taka.
Good morning. It's already the afternoon. Don't tell me you're just getting to school now.
Oh, should I have said good day instead?
That's not the issue. How could you have possibly been this late to class?
About that. I went outside the academy yesterday evening to take care of something, and I happened to get involved in a little hostage situation.
What?
Yeah, I was the hostage. It was pretty hectic, but anyway, I just got back now.
What an outrageous experience.
Ahaya, yeah, it was sort of a hassle.
I apologize for scolding you. I will reflect on my actions.
Don't worry about it. You were just doing your job as the ultimate moral compass. Right? Stopping the talent from shining is impossible.
Hold on. There's one thing I want to correct. I am not talented. I got where I am by putting in effort every day.
Huh? But you've been accepted as someone talented enough to be an ultimate, right?
That is because my repeated effort was evaluated and acknowledged. I was acknowledged as an ultimate for working hard. I want the world to work the same way.
You're going to change the world so that those who work hard can succeed. From the perspective of scum like me, you're someone with an amazing talent.
GH. So you still value natural talent over hard work. However, it should be that those who work hard can win and those with talent aren't relied on.
Amazing. With your talent and your will, you'll create a world filled with hope.
I'm starting to think we're not having the same discussion here.
Sorry. It's unforgivable for scum like me to waste a talented person's time like that.
I frankly should have expected that, seeing the people involved. Anyway, I think Taka's a really fun and enjoyable character. 8 out of 10.
My name is Kyoko Kirigiri.
Okay, here come the trigger-happy hot takes. I'm just gonna say it. I never really found Kyoko to be that interesting of a character. I heard there's an entire novel series that develops her character, and if I were to read said novels, I might grow to like her more as a character, but right now, I'm just indifferent. I'm not saying Kyoko is a badly written character, but like Makoto and Byakuya, she just feels like a generic cootery anime girl you'd find in some isekai or something. In Trigger Happy Havoc, she's kind of the tutorial mentor, so I expected Kyoko to die pretty early on as the player gets a better handle of the mystery solving. So when it turns out that Kyoko lived the entire time, it just feels kind of weird since she's still giving out these hints later in the game. I actually expected Kyoko to be the mastermind because of this, but I feel like her being the ultimate detective does a fairly good job at explaining most of her hint giving. However, there are still some things that Kyoko says that she shouldn't possibly know, even as a detective, but still does somehow. Maybe she knew what the mastermind was going to do before her memories got wiped, seeing as she's the daughter of the headmaster? Either way, while I do feel like she serves her role well, I just don't get her. 5 out of 10. I do want to say one more thing before I get on to the next character. I am happy that characters like Kyoko, Mukuro, and Junko are getting novels and manga that expand their character. I feel like all three of them, while serviceable, needed something a little more for them to shine, so it's nice that the writing team is doing just that. I feel like I really need to do a follow-up when I finally get to read all these novels, but right now I'm just basing them on the games and anime.
Yo, the name's Leon Kawada. What's up?
When I played Trigger Happy Havoc for the first time, this guy was my favorite. I found the fact that he dislikes his ultimate talent to be very interesting, similar to how I felt about Taka's free time events. However, when I got to his own free time events, I was initially let down since he wanted to be a musician for shallow reasons, but now I actually don't mind them. Because of this, he's probably the best person to be the first blackened. When I was editing my motive video, that scene where Leon was confirmed to be the culprit still sent chills down my spine. I actually made a whole video about it. Go check it out. You know I was going to make a character analysis video? Well, this was going to be the character I would talk about. The point of the video was about how, thanks to Leon's unique characterization, his punishment affected the impressions of the players for the better. Maybe it's just because I have a soft spot for this guy, but I think Leon has a lot of good things going for him. 7 out of 10.
Name's Mondo Awada. Nice to fucking meet you.
Before I got into Chapter 2, I wasn't a real big fan of Mondo. To me, he just felt like a more exaggerated version of Leon, and since I already had Leon, I felt like I didn't need Mondo. However, with his newfound relationship with Taka and his killer reveal, I started to like him more, especially in the Leonless world we live nowadays. Mondo's motive has to be one of the most unique murder motives in the entire series. Having a case where the perpetrator didn't want the victim to die, but caused him to die anyway is both incredibly tragic and incredibly interesting. I also think that his personality is kind of unique, and that the dilemma he faces in his free time events is quite interesting. Having an ultimate talent become obsolete as one becomes an adult is quite frightening. Initially I was turned off from this character, but I've warmed up to him. 7 out of 10.
I am Sakura Ogami.
Sakura is definitely a strange character in terms of likability. Almost everyone at least likes this character, but no one really talks about her for some reason. I feel like it has to do with the fact that for a lot of Danganronpa fans, they enjoy the character's aesthetic as well as how the character is written. Considering that Sakura is designed to be unconventional looking, I guess fans wouldn't talk about that side as much, especially since her outfit is one of the most visually uninteresting in the series. One aspect of Sakura that I find interesting is that, similar to how Hifumi was written to be solely unlikable, Sakura was written to be as likable as humanly possible. She's kind, rational, strong, and is able to have a murder motive that has zero moral downsides to it. Some may say that this aspect of her makes her poorly written, but I believe it serves two very important purposes. The first is that, because of how likable of a character Sakura is, the only reason you could ever dislike a character like her is because of her unconventional appearance, showing the inner bias of the player. It's like those Beauty and the Beast fables, where the moral of the story is what's on the inside that counts. The second purpose her flawlessness brings is that she becomes the least expected person to be the spy for Monokuma. The main problem I see with flawless characters is that the story serves the character rather than the character serving the story. As such, everything and everyone revolves around this character. Sakura, on the other hand, stays in her lane as a side character, so instead of the audience being constantly reminded that she is likable, they just have a subconscious thought in the back of their mind that Sakura is a likable character. When people think of who is the traitor, they typically think of the most important characters first, like Kyoko, so the fact that Sakura just stands in the sidelines not only excuses her flawlessness, but also surprises the viewers when she turns out to be the mastermind. Overall, Sakura is flawless, but that flawlessness of hers is actually one thing that prevents her from becoming one of my all-time favorites. 7 out of 10.
Hi, I'm Sayaka Mizono. I look forward to getting to know you.
Initially, I found Sayaka and her design to be quite boring. I felt like she was waving a giant death flag over our faces, and I was quite bitter that she was trying to kill my once favorite character, Leon. However, as time passed by, I started to grow more attached to this character, if ever so slightly. I like how she seems like a generic victim at first, but it later turns out that she's not so innocent after all. It's a nice way to show that Danganronpa is different from the typical murder mystery. Speaking of which, another thing I like about Sayaka is how both she and Leon have morally gray reasons for doing what they did, and that who is in the right is completely subjective to the viewer. Also, while I initially thought Sayaka's design was quite boring, as I saw more character designs throughout the series, I realized that Sayaka has her own unique charm to her design, and I find it rather cute. 6 out of 10.
Not that you'll remember my name anyway, but I'm Togo Fukawa.
Togo is one of those characters that increasingly becomes more likable as the story progresses. When first starting Trigger Happy Havoc, I really disliked her, as I felt like she was the typical tsundere and hated on everyone for no good reason. Then, everything changed when Genocide Jack was introduced. Not only was she a very fun character, but her inclusion somehow made Togo a better character as well. And just when I thought Togo was going to be as good as she gets in Trigger Happy Havoc, she makes a grand return as the deuteragonist in Ultra Despair Girls. Not only did she get some more funny moments, such as her literary gatekeeping, but she also started to become more than just comic relief. We got to see those little pieces of Togo's backstory and her personal growth as a character. They even go back on Toko's unlikability in the first game and have her improve on that as she becomes genuine friends with Komaru. Togo is quite a special character, as she is one of the only ones that is both a funny comic relief and a character that grows and can be taken seriously. That is such an accomplishment that I am actually going to give Togo a 10 out of 10. In this list, I try to use this sacred rating as little as possible, so when someone does get a 10 out of 10, it means a lot.
I'm Yasuhiro Hagakure. Hero for short. Take it easy, yeah? I know I will.
When it comes to Yasuhiro, and a couple other characters on this list, your opinion on him revolves entirely on whether you find him funny or not. If you do, he's a nice addition to the cast and brings a lot of charm to the game. If you don't, he is your utter hell that will ruin your entire day whenever he makes a cringeworthy one-liner during a class trial. And you know what? I actually find him funny. After I finished Trigger Happy Havoc for the first time, I was surprised to see that Yasuhiro was an unpopular character. I find a lot of his antics funny, such as how obvious he's doing the fortune-telling to get a quick buck and, despite believing he is a psychic, insists that he doesn't believe in any pseudoscience like the occult. I do understand why some people don't like him, as he can be quite selfish at times, and the fact that he's an ultimate at all is pretty confusing. I have two possibilities as to why he's an ultimate. The first is that he's only the best fortune teller because everyone else in that field is so bad at it that he is the best in comparison. The second is that, despite being a rare occurrence, there are multiple times where Yasuhiro actually predicts the future correctly, which is more than I can say with other psychics. If I was speaking objectively, Yasuhiro would be a 5 out of 10, a character that serves his place as the defendant in most trials, but not much else. However, since these ranks are a mix of objective analysis and personal opinion, I find him to rank a lot higher than that due to his humor and charm. 7 out of 10. You know what? Taking a look at each of the characters objectively, I see a lot of pros that the Trigger Happy Havoc cast has over others. The most major one is that there are multiple non-important characters that play a large role in the story, such as Celeste, Chihiro, and Sakura. Like I said before, the clear division of important characters and non-important ones bothers me with the series, so having the lines be blurred is nice to see again. In terms of score, it seems like there's an average of around 7 out of 10, and there were only a few characters that were on the lower end of the number spectrum, being Byakuya and Hifumi. I guess the general consensus when it comes to Trigger Happy Havoc characters is that they're pretty alright. While not as memorable as characters in future games, this cast is a relatively good one. Wow, I did not expect the script to be so long. I think I'll have to divide it into multiple parts. This next part will be discussing characters in Goodbye Despair. I'll see you when that comes out.